Good evening. This is YouTube News Time. Tonight, we bring you a breaking story, an urgent and important update you need to hear.
I'm Jesse Geen with breaking news from the Middle East. After 2 years of devastating conflict, a moment of hope. Today, 20 Israeli hostages returned home from Gaza while Israel released nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners as part of a historic ceasefire agreement. President Trump, on the ground in Israel and Egypt, is hailing what he calls the historic dawn of a new Middle East. But significant questions remain about whether this fragile peace can hold. The scenes today were ones that many feared they would never witness. Tearful reunions in Israel as hostages embraced their families for the first time in 2 years. Celebrations in the West Bank as Palestinian prisoners stepped off buses to cheering crowds. And President Trump addressing Israel's parliament, proclaiming an end to the war. But beneath the relief and celebration, a complex reality persists. Israel and Hamas have not agreed on the next steps in Gaza, and the path to lasting peace remains uncertain. Let's break down today's extraordinary developments. This morning, Hamas released the last 20 living hostages from Gaza. The International Committee of the Red Cross transported them in vehicles through Gaza and handed them over to the Israeli military. Among those freed was 24-year-old Alon Ohel, a pianist from northern Israel who was seized from a roadside bomb shelter after fleeing the Nova Music Festival during the October 2023 attack. 25-year-old Matan Zangauker was reunited with his mother, Einav, who had become one of the fiercest critics of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a prominent voice in the movement demanding their release. In a video call from Gaza before his release, Einav told her son, "There's no war, it's over. You are coming home." Hours later, Israel completed the release of all 1,968 Palestinian prisoners as part of the exchange deal. The prisoners were sent to the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. In Ramallah, crowds gathered at dawn, breaking into tearful celebrations as buses carrying the released prisoners approached. Many of the men looked exhausted but flashed victory signs to the cheering crowds. Nasser Shahadeh, released after serving 3 years of a 17-year sentence, said, "This feeling is indescribable. I haven't slept since the moment I found out 3 days ago." Among those freed were 250 Palestinians convicted of terrorism offenses and roughly 1,700 more who were detained in Gaza without charge during the war. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society reported that 8 prisoners required hospitalization upon release. President Trump arrived in Israel this morning and became the first U.S. president to address the Knesset, Israel's parliament, since George W. Bush in 2008. Standing before cheering lawmakers, Trump declared that the ceasefire marked the historic dawn of a new Middle East. But the speech was vintage Trump, going into lengthy digressions, praising Israel, touting his own accomplishments, and criticizing his Democratic predecessors, Joseph Biden and Barack Obama. In one particularly controversial moment, Trump shattered diplomatic protocol by urging Israeli President Isaac Herzog to pardon Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is currently the defendant in a long-running criminal trial on charges including bribery. The address drew mixed reactions, with some praising Trump's direct involvement in brokering the deal, while others questioned whether his approach could lead to sustainable peace. After his speech, President Trump flew to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, where more than 20 world leaders gathered for what's being billed as an international peace summit. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi greeted Trump's arrival with these words, "From the city of Sharm el-Sheikh, the will of the people meets the resolve of world leaders to end the war in Gaza. They all carry a single message to mankind: enough war. Welcome to peace." Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz expressed optimism, saying, "The war in Gaza is at its end." However, Prime Minister Netanyahu will not attend the summit, with his office citing a Jewish religious holiday. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is participating. Despite the celebrations, significant challenges remain. The 2-hour summit, while full of pomp and circumstance, must address thornier details that could determine whether this ceasefire becomes lasting peace or merely a temporary pause. Key among these issues: will Hamas disarm? Will Israel fully withdraw from Gaza? What role will the Palestinian Authority play in governing Gaza? Netanyahu has already stated that the military campaign in Gaza is not over, causing concern among Gulf countries who are being asked to fund Gaza's reconstruction. Hamas still needs to return the bodies of at least 26 hostages who died in captivity. Today, Hamas's armed wing announced it would release the remains of only 4 individuals, 3 Israelis and 1 Nepalese citizen. Israeli officials called this a violation of the agreement, which stipulated all bodies should be returned within a 72-hour window. The Hostages and Missing Persons Families Forum, an Israeli advocacy group, said in a statement, "This represents a blatant breach of the agreement by Hamas." The relief felt by many today is tempered by the devastating toll of this 2-year conflict. In Gaza, where the United Nations says real progress is being made in delivering aid, residents face a landscape of devastation. Cities have been reduced to rubble, and a UN-backed panel has declared that some areas are officially under famine conditions. Said Abu Aida, a 44-year-old displaced resident, captured the complex emotions many Gazans feel today. "It's important the bombing has stopped, but there's nothing to be happy about. My 2 daughters were killed, my home was destroyed and my health has deteriorated." The numbers tell a grim story. The Hamas-led attack on Israel in October 2023 killed about 1,200 people and resulted in about 250 abductions. Israel's military response has killed approximately 67,000 Palestinians, according to Gazan health authorities. In just the past 24 hours, Gaza's health ministry reported that 60 bodies were recovered from under rubble and taken to hospitals across the territory. As President Trump prepares to leave the Middle East, regional powers will be left to resolve the complex details that could make or break this peace agreement. Egypt is crucial to the plan, which envisions reopening Gaza's border to allow aid in and provide an exit for those who seek it. But Egyptian officials are wary of a mass influx of refugees, fearing both accusations of helping displace Palestinians and security concerns if Hamas militants cross the border. Gulf countries, expected to fund Gaza's reconstruction, want assurances that their money won't be spent while Israeli military operations continue. They're also pushing for a role for the Palestinian Authority in Gaza's future, something Israel has rejected. As one analyst put it, "The world finally got something they have long wanted, U.S. buy-in." But how to keep the American weight there, while they try to work out the details, is the harder part. Today brought scenes of joy and relief that many thought impossible just weeks ago. Families reunited after 2 years of anguish, prisoners returning home to celebration, and world leaders gathering to proclaim an end to war. But the path from ceasefire to lasting peace is long and uncertain. Critical issues remain unresolved, trust between the parties is nearly non-existent, and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is staggering. What happens in the coming days and weeks will determine whether today's historic moment becomes a turning point toward peace, or simply another chapter in a seemingly endless cycle of conflict. We will continue to monitor developments closely and bring you updates as this story unfolds. Producer notes: use footage of hostage reunions, prisoner releases in Ramallah and Gaza, Trump's Knesset speech, Egypt summit arrivals, and Gaza destruction throughout. Display maps showing key locations: Gaza, West Bank, Ramallah, Khan Yunis, Sharm el-Sheikh. Show statistics on screen during casualty numbers section. Be sensitive with imagery given the emotional nature of reunions and the devastating conditions in Gaza.